Cool. So I'm Grace. I'm an OG Girls Where You At member, and I started same year Girls Where You At in 2017 when Kim rocked up at my college and said, "Hey, we're doing this project for girls and young women. Who wants to be involved?" And I was like, "Sure." And at the time, we were doing like loads of radio and media and music stuff, which was obviously right up my alley. And I feel like for that sort of 2 years, I got loads more confident and sort of started exploring hobbies and stuff I hadn't really thought I could do. So there was that. And then I went to uni in 2018 and obviously didn't go to any sessions and then kept coming back in the summer. And now I'm in my final year and it's a little bit weird.
But tell us a little bit more about you then as a person, and what we were going to talk a bit about today was kind of neurodiversity and autism and Asperger's, and I guess dealing with that and how it impacts well-being and things like that.
Yes, it's been about 10 years since I got diagnosed with Asperger's, but I choose to kind of just say I'm autistic because it's on the spectrum and it's less of a fact to explain, basically, because people know what autism is. Um, and I think definitely over the last year or so, particularly while we've been in lockdown, I've kind of been alone a lot more. I've done a lot more like self-reflection and sort of like 10 years ago when I got diagnosed, I thought I was kind of high functioning with the words they used at the time, and you don't really use those words anymore. It's a little bit yikes. But at the time, I was like, oh, I can deal with most situations. I don't need like extra support or whatever. I only really needed extra support when I was having meltdowns in public, and that was. It's really funny because the reason why I got that diagnosis was because me having meltdowns at school was impacting my school life, but there was never really like the teachers and the support staff never really put that much effort into giving me an environment where I wouldn't have these meltdowns. Like they thought it was just something that I was choosing to do, and they thought it was like a conscious decision on my part. I remember being told in like year 11, "Oh, you've come so far since year 7 and you must have you must have done so much trying to stop having meltdowns." And I'm like, I barely did anything. It's partially because I've grown up. It's partially because, well, I was being bullied less in year 11 than I was in year 7 for a start, which often like triggered a meltdown because kids in the class were like shouting at me and throwing things at me and whatever. I wasn't the most well liked of kids. um but yeah, it's really odd to me looking back that I wasn't like in like support sessions or whatever. Like I don't know whether those were a thing in my school or whether like they just didn't have the resources. But yeah, I think it's been a very weird journey in the last 10 years, and I'm still learning about myself. I'm still learning kind of how I function best, I guess. What things I have to put in place to kind of make life as easy as possible.
Well, that's really interesting, Grace, that you say that, and we'll come to that about putting things in place. But having worked in a college um, where we had a lot of students with autism, and other, I really recognise what you're saying about actually, even when people have got a diagnosis, and even when people have been like the teachers have been told what to do, it often doesn't happen. And I think
Yeah.
it's often down to, it is sometimes it's a resource issue, but it's also sometimes down to just people not really understanding or not really wanting to make the effort.
Mm. I
And
found student support at college actually were very much kind of like um under the impression that because I didn't need a support assistant, like I wasn't like in need of constant support by my side, that I didn't need any at all.
mm,
And I think there's very much kind of a a lot of people know that it's a spectrum, but a lot of people also don't acknowledge the rest of the spectrum. Like, there's a very sort of, it's like a Venn diagram. You've got the massive circle that is the autism spectrum, and you've got a tiny little circle inside that circle, which is the bit that people think about when you say autism. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think that girls aren't as supported as well. Girls with, additional needs or neurodiversity. I have worked in schools, and the only people with a one-to-one, usually like 99% were boys, because they show it in a different way. And so, like you say, Grace, people, because you didn't need constant like assistance, people probably thought that you were coping fine, when actually that's not, but just because you showcase it differently doesn't mean that you don't need additional support. And I think that's something that society is not very good at, women and girls not showing it in the same way as boys and men do. Doesn't mean that we don't need the same support and assistance, or just a different type of mechanisms to help us. So I think girls do get really, really left behind.
Yeah.
And then it impacts, you then have to learn all this stuff when you're out of those like places where you do have teachers and support systems. So when you're in adulthood, you're then having to figure that out for yourself, and that's it could be too late for some people to have to learn that by themselves. And it's just so unfair that these systems aren't in place, and that people don't, like you say, recognize it as much. Really sad.
Yeah, definitely. I think I was actually thinking about this last night, and I thought, when I was a lot younger, like early primary school, there was a lot of things I remember of me exhibiting autistic traits, and none of the, like, I don't know if the teachers had any suspicions or whatever, but it kind of came out of nowhere when I got my diagnosis. I think, if I remember correctly, I was in speech therapy for some reason, even though, like, I learned to read super quickly, and like my English skills were like really high. I was one of the gifted kids, but I got referred to speech therapy after going to my doctor about anxiety when I was like 8, 9. And I don't quite know how, I don't remember exactly how I got to speech therapy, but I do remember going to speech therapy like maybe 2 sessions. And then I had like my second session, and the therapist was like, I think you're in the wrong thing, but I'm gonna look at getting you assessed for autism. And my parents were a little bit scared, I think, at the time. And then I remember getting this big research booklet thingy from the National Autistic Society. And then I didn't learn anything else about it. I barely knew anything. I knew I had this label. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it meant. And as I sort of got older and sort of started going on the internet, I started clicking on like every article I saw, particularly about like autism traits in girls and how they were different from the ones that boys often show.
Yeah.
And then I started feeling seen. I was like, yeah, that is actually me. I was reading all of these and I was like, yeah, okay, I relate to that, I relate to that, I relate to that. And that was sort of when I started sort of putting the pieces together and looking at these articles and reading these stories and applying that to my childhood and my life.
How does that make you feel when you are able to recognize those traits and see that in yourself?
It feels like getting closure, because for like my whole particularly primary school and like the first part of secondary, it was almost like a mystery. Like, the teachers were treating me as this enigma of this, why is she acting this way, why does she do X, Y, and Z? And then I can look at it now 10 years later and be like, yeah, I know why I did X, Y, and Z, because I was in sensory overload, and there was lots of things happening at once. Particularly, like, I would often, like, year 7 and 8, I used to have cover teachers a lot, because Ipswich Academy, that's all. That is all. Ipswich Academy in 2012, 2013. That's all I'm going to say. And the teachers, the lessons when we had cover teachers were always super chaotic, and the kids in my class would just go mad when we had a cover teacher. And that used to put me on edge because I didn't know what was going to happen next. It was all really chaotic, and I couldn't control that because it was all the other kids in the class. And a lot of the time, I was getting stuff thrown at me. I was getting shouted at. People were saying, "Can I borrow a pencil?" And then giving my pencil back 3 hours later, blunt and broken in half. And that was just too much. And if something else on top of that happened, like if someone then started antagonizing me on top of that, then I would just flip. And I remember, lost count of the amount of lessons I either got told to leave or just left of my own accord. Because as I got a little bit older, like in year 8 kind of time, I started realizing that if I removed myself from the situation, it didn't escalate. And although removing myself from the situation kind of often, people used to mistake that for storming out or like just raging. And I was trying to get myself out of the situation that was going to make me rage even more. But I think a lot of kids use that as like bait against me because, you know, they were 13. That's what you do when you're 13. And then, yeah, even though it became a good strategy in the long run, like I remember in college, I used to hide in the toilets. And, you know, actually, it wasn't just college. It was like year 10, 11, and then college. Like the toilets used to just be my safe space. Like if I didn't feel safe in the lesson and if I felt like I was going to blow up or like do something stupid, I was like, I'm going to go to the toilet. And then I went to the toilets and I hid in there for like half an hour.
Wow.
Just on my phone.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a good strategy, and it's good that you learned to do that. I mean, it's not ideal. You shouldn't have had to go and hide in the toilet.
Yeah.
But at least you were, like you say, able to recognise and put something in place. So school obviously had its challenges, and then how did you find college?
It was quite refreshing, I think, because there was that massive shift between year 11 and college where you're suddenly treated like an adult. And I think I'd always been told I was mature for my age, even though I felt like I was really childish. And suddenly not being treated like a child anymore was, I think, helpful, because like my tutors started seeing my perspective. And I think it helped that like one of the tutors I saw most often was also on the spectrum. And I think that was like one of the first thing we ever spoke about at like the open day. I think he asked if I was, because he like sort of saw it in me just from how enthusiastic I was about radio. And kind of, I think because there was someone who kind of got it, I was like, okay, I think this might not be so bad. And I definitely came out of my shell in the summer. Well, I knew I wanted to make that summer like a fresh start. I wanted to be the me that, like the real me, because in school I kind of hid. I wanted to be normal, I wanted to fit in, and I didn't want anyone to notice that I was there pretty much in school. So I just went about my day, didn't do any funky hairstyles. I was like, right, I'm just going to have my hair normal. I'm going to wear my uniform normal. I'm going to buy a normal bag. I'm going to have a normal pencil case. I'm going to be normal. And then something flipped the switch in my head at prom. And at prom, I finally started letting loose and being myself and actually having fun. And fast forward to like 10:30 that night, I was in my socks, bouncing about, pulling my dress up because my feet hurt, and otherwise I would have tripped over, and just bouncing about to whatever song they were playing at the time. And that was like, I felt free. I felt happy. I was like, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. I don't care if they judge me for taking my shoes off. My feet hurt. And I don't care if they judge me for looking like an idiot bouncing about to this song. I don't care. I'm having fun. And that I took that moment and I was like, I want more moments like this. And then I went and did NTS that summer. And if you don't know what NTS is, basically like a 4-week program. And you start off going to an adventure holiday, which I hated because I have millions of fears that all involve things like heights and water. But it was good because I had a really great team and they were lovely. And when I kind of panicked in the water after being chucked off a raft, I was kind of like, they all gave me a massive group hug. And then the second week was a university. We went to Essex Uni and stayed there for a week and did loads of workshops. Third week was planning a charity project, and fourth week was executing the charity project. And I really enjoyed that. Like, I got to meet different people, because I think one of my problems at school was I was kind of stuck seeing the same people every day and they all knew who I was, because my school was quite small and everyone knew each other. And because everyone in my class knew people in the other years, well, everyone in my class knew people in other classes and everyone knew people in other years. So like 95% of the school knew my face and knew who I was, knew I was that kid. So I went and did NCS, and there were maybe like 3 people who already knew me because they went to the same school. And those people were in the year above and were actually nice. So like, it was a massive shift to suddenly, I was finally making an impression on new people who didn't already know who I was. And I think that was really, really good, because
an opportunity to reinvent yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I could choose
anonymous people and say, okay, this is me.
Actually. Yeah. I could choose to give them the version of me that I liked, the version of me that was so happy bouncing about in my socks at prom. I gave them that version of me.
We love that version. That's awesome. That's actually.
And then I kind of carried that on into college. And although there was a few blips in college, was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But like I think my mental health took a tank as well, like halfway through second year of college, and that was partially because of stress of picking uni, partially because all of my friends were going through some bad times and I had to help them. And it was actually things like Girls Where You At that helped me with that. And like, just, I knew that being in environments where I was being embraced and celebrated was something that I needed, because I hadn't had that before. I hadn't felt like people liked me for me. And yeah, that was just refreshing, I think. So in those 2 years, I finally actually started exploring who I was.
Yeah. And then you obviously went to uni, and you mentioned earlier a bit about, and you've already talked a bit about this, putting structures and putting things in place to help you cope. So what kinds of things do you do?
Well, first of all, when I first got to uni, I got offered, because I put on my little application form that I was autistic, I got offered a quiet enrollment period. So that was just 2 days before I just saw Emily go, oh wow.
I've heard of that, and I just think that's so like.
Yeah, that is. I think it was like the first or second year that staffs did it, and I think they were like one of the only universities to offer it. Which that was one of the reasons why I came here, because I knew they had that option. And it was like 2 days before the rest of everyone else moved into halls. There was probably about 50 of us, and we all moved into halls. I think I was the only one in my block for those 2 days. So I just blasted my music and listened to the radio, danced about the kitchen, making noodles. It was great. And they ran like workshops and talks, and they got like the well-being team in to talk to us, to like introduce themselves and tell them who they were. We got free food, so can't complain. Bonus, yeah. And got extra time to unpack as well, which meant that by the time all my flatmates got here, I'd already had a chance to go to the shops and buy them snacks.
Yeah. But that's not, because that is such a stressful. I remember when I moved into uni, I went to UEA, and there's like they're called the ziggurats.
I hate that. I went to those on the open day. I hated them. They make me anxious.
It was so.
I hate the stairs. I don't know what it is. I hate the stairs.
I've got many a scar from falling down them stairs. There's 4 flats in each block, and there's like 8 blocks, and everybody moved in the same day. Like that is overwhelming for anybody. So like if that is something that it triggers you or makes you uncomfortable anyway, like that's like that but times 100. That is such a good idea. Like I don't think I've ever heard of that before, but it makes total sense.
I think
be something
that quiet enrollment, and also the fact that one of my friends from college was going to the same uni at the same time, also doing quiet enrollment, so we stuck together for like most of that.
But then it also shows you like going forward, like how much they, you know, are going to support you. You know, that's the first step, and it shows that they have thought about the, you know, the students that will be coming in. And actually, that's such an important part to think. Actually, if you're thinking, oh, I don't know which one to go to, that is something that you would definitely, you know, is going to benefit you. And then you know that they've sort of thought about how they can support you going forward. That's I literally can't get over that. That's amazing.
And then from there I got a learning support agreement like negotiated with kind of between the wellbeing team and the actual uni, which is like the scheme where you can basically choose to have provisions put in place that will help you complete your deadlines to a good standard on time.
Amazing.
And for me, it's basically just I can get extensions without going through the faff of extenuating circumstances, which actually came in clutch for me yesterday, because I realised that the 2nd of April is next week, and I'd forgotten that the 2nd of April is next week. And it was the radio assignment I was telling you about earlier, where I had 4,000 words, I was about 2,500 in, and I'd barely got to November, and I had to rewrite everything and make it shorter. And I kind of panicked about that because I was like, there is no way I'm going to get this done within a week to a good standard. Emailed my lecturer. He said, I can give you an extra week with your LSA. And I was like, legend, let's do this.
Yeah. Because then it also takes the stress out of having to go through all of those like procedures of having to say why you need an extension and going and meeting with your tutor. And
yeah, because the anxiety of that would just put me off completely. Like, thank you.
Yeah, and then you probably wouldn't get that extension because the anxiety would be too much, and you'd just be like, look, I'll
blow it, completely.
I'll hand it in, knowing that you haven't done your best. Like that is so. Also, you have a wellbeing team. I don't think we had I don't think I ever heard the word wellbeing.
Yeah, I think actually people who go here say it's a bad university, but I personally think they're ahead of the curve in terms of supporting their students and making every student feel supported. And if people don't feel supported, I think that's their own problem because they haven't actually reached out to get the help that they need.
Yeah, because it sounds like the support is there.
I think I also am in a good place because my course itself is good. Like, it's quite small, there's about 30 of us, and all of the lecturers, we see them all, we know them all. Like, we know our course leader well because he teaches one of our modules, whereas other like large courses, like a couple of my housemates do psychology, and they don't even know their course leader, like, and they get different lecturers for their modules every week because it's such a massive department, whereas our course is so small, we get the same lecturer, same module, probably some lecturers juggle 2 modules at once, and we know them all by name, by face, and we can just send them an email and be like, hi Gavin, help, and then they'll help pretty much. So
what I like about that is it starts from a place of believing you as well and trusting you.
Absolutely.
Because the thing I found in education was there was often this kind of attitude that if someone's got a diagnosis, they're going to use it.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I hate that attitude of, it's almost like, oh, well, they're going to play on that to get what they want. And that's such a
I get so much imposter syndrome about that as well, because
it's such a weird way for people to think. And I think that that's not just with you know, people with special educational needs. You hear it across all sorts of things, don't you? Like when people say, oh, they're playing the race card.
Yeah, or like disability, just in like disabilities as well. Like I had a friend at high school.
Those are sort of expressions make me literally go, you know, from zero to kind of ballistic, because you know, it's so that is so nice, because it's starting from that place of trust of saying, we recognize that you may have issues, so we want to make it as easy as possible for you to still succeed, which is brilliant. Definitely. So what other things do you have to put in place then, Grace?
I am a massive routines and lists nerd. Like I can pull up my weekly, like this is my full work plan. I can pull it up and share my screen, because this just shows to the extent that I plan like crazy. And people often think, oh, how are you so organized? I don't know how I could do that. And this feels like bare minimum for me. Like if I didn't have this plan in place, I would just be all over the shop and I would not know what I was doing from day to day. And I probably wouldn't actually get any work done.
Do you think?
And I've got notebooks upon notebooks on my shelf up here where I just write lists.
Yeah.
And like to-do lists. And
that help your mental health to have routines? And
absolutely, yeah. Like, because I feel like I've done something. Like if I set tiny goals, I feel like I've actually achieved something in that day, rather than saying, right, I've got 4,000 words to write by the 9th of April and it's the 27th of March. How am I going to do that? 4,000 is such a lot. But if I say I'm going to write 400 a day,
yes,
and then I get it done.
Yeah, that's what I always think, that small wins are better than like big
absolutely
wins.
Yeah. And when my Microsoft Word eventually loads, I will show you how I divide up my day.
On a to-do list, I'll always put like really simple things on there that I know I will 100% be able to get done, because being able to just tick something off is so much better than having loads of big things that you know you're not going to get done.
Definitely, yeah.
Get dressed.
What's this I've just found? Back when I was station manager, so I also, another thing I learned in the last year was boundaries. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. And I was station manager last year in radio station for like 4 months, and it didn't work out. My mental health just tanked. I wasn't feeling it. I just felt stressed all the time. Felt like if I took a mental health break, I'd be told I was lazy and not doing enough as the manager. And if I kept going in, I'd get burnt out, and I was already burnt out. So it didn't work out very well. And my lecturer basically called me on Messenger. This is the rapport we have with our lecturers. We have them on Facebook. They call us on Messenger. And he basically called me. I was in the middle of doing some work, and he called me and was like, so I've been hearing reports that you're not doing so well, and there's an option. I've been discussing it with the former manager. There's an option for him to step back in and take the spot, and for you to do something different on committee that isn't taking up all of your time, and it means you can actually complete the rest of your deadlines. So I took that. I was like, okay. I wasn't going to at first, and I took a little bit of convincing. And then I remembered a quote that I was watching a live stream, and it was like one of those music ones where the musicians make the music and then all the people that watch them remix it and then like show off all their incredible talent. And then one of the guys in chat was like, oh, you should manage us and make a label and manage all of us. And one of the guys on the stream was like, I can't manage people. It takes like 6 people to manage me. And I related to that far too much for someone who was a station manager. So then when Gavin called me next, I was like, right, okay, so this happened, and I think I'm going to switch roles.
Good idea. But that's it, that knowing yourself, like, you know if something's not right, like you said. So putting those boundaries in place, like, you can't do everything, and people's expectations on you have to just go by what you want for yourself, not everybody else's expectations. And boundaries is such a thing that I just don't think people think about enough. Like, saying no is okay. You don't have to say yes to everything. If your friends want to meet up and you don't feel like it, you can say no. And if they get annoyed at you for that, that's on them. That's not on you. You know, and if if there's a really great opportunity but you don't think it's going to bode well for your mental health, and you turn it down, and people say, oh, you're an idiot, you should have taken it, it's such a good opportunity, just know that you have done that for yourself, because really you wouldn't have been, what would you have gained from that if you know your mental health isn't as good as it could have been? You're not gaining anything, you know. So I think that's so like inspiring that you took that and said you wanted that so much, but you knew that you
I just, yeah, I don't think I was the right person for the job in that particular frame of mind. Like, if it had been next year, or if we hadn't have had all the COVID trouble, like, if the circumstances had been normal, I would probably have done it, and it would probably have been fine, and I would probably have flourished. But I just kind of had to accept that I was not flourishing, and yeah.
And it's not like that's the last time you're ever going to get an opportunity like that, you know. Like, you've done so much and you have so much experience, those things will come about again. Just because you don't take it at one time doesn't mean that that's it now. Like, you're never gonna, like, that was your one chance. That's not
I mean, the main thing I really enjoyed about it was being able to network with the Student Radio Association, because in normal circumstances it's only really the manager and deputy that gets a network with the Student Radio Association, and everyone else is just kind of comes along to events if they're invited. But I stayed on in the Discord group that they've got for all the station managers, because the guy that took over as station manager doesn't really use Discord, and I wanted to carry on repping for our station, and I'm still in there, still repping for the station. I think I'm the only person from the station that's attending the conference next week on Zoom. And there's so many cool people there. There's going to be like Ariel Free from Radio 1, Charlie Hedges, Jordan Banjo from Kiss, I think, is going to be there. Munya Chihuahua, the comedian, as well. There's so many cool people. I can't even like name them all off the top of my head. It's really exciting. And there's like socials and quizzes and stuff, and getting drunk as well, which is
perfect
because we're students. Yeah, but I couldn't get the thingy up on my laptop, but this is basically how I plan my weeks. Everything's color coded. It all has to be color coded.
Color code.
Yeah. So actually the color code ties in with my uni notebook, which is over there, and every module has its own color.
Oh wow.
So this is what I mean by structuring everything, and I feel like that has helped me. Like, I'm gonna brag a little bit here. I've got first this year, and there's like I got 2 firsts in the same semester, and I've never done that before.
Oh my goodness.
So I think that is because I'm doing all of this to organize myself in this bad boy notebook.
Yeah.
So I've got sections for each module. So I've got the blue one, I've got the green one for radio, I've got the yellow one for script writing. This orange section is basically for anything else that doesn't fit in. I've got these lovely little clocks for my radio show. And the pink section is for employability module, which is not done.
But it's whatever helps you, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
And what helps me is writing aesthetic notes.
I think routine and structure will help anyone with mental health problems, to be honest. I think having a routine.
I think personally you've just got to like tailor it to your specific needs.
Yeah.
Because some people find that scheduling everything doesn't work. Some people find that they don't stick to their schedule.
Yeah.
And some people prefer like carrots on sticks. Some people prefer saying, okay, I'll do an hour of work and then I will play video games. And then I'll do another hour of work and then I'll watch this film, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think having any sort of routine, even just get up at the same time every day, go for one walk a day, you know, like you said, Emmy, get dressed, tick, you know, whatever it is, even if it's the bare minimum. I think having that routine is always really helpful. I remember once, Grace, you said something to me, and I actually quoted this the other day to a group of students I was teaching, about how when you were struggling with your mental health and you had those thoughts, you turned them into characters.
Oh, I've still got those somewhere.
I think that's amazing, and I
It's
just want
like what's
share
that
that
film
with us.
that's really Inside Out?
Inside Out. I love that film. Yeah.
That's one of my
I think I've got them in my sketchbook. I'm not sure. This is like my ancient sketchbook from like 2017. Do I have any comic content in here? I'm actually not sure I do, which is a little bit annoying, but no, I'm sure I've got some before. That's a good little tree.
Oh,
Such a
Big
good
tree
film,
energy.
isn't it?
It's a shame I'm not wearing the t-shirt I wore yesterday, which is Big Tree Energy.
ah,
So I thought I had some of those drawings in it. Oh yeah, there they are. There they are.
Oh, cool.
They were the little two sides of my brain. So she was the super cute, adorable, optimistic, happy-go-lucky little bean. She was the one who second guesses everything, and like she's a bit of a realist, but also second guesses everything, and like has a very small comfort zone. But they're best friends, and
So
they kind of learn to work with each other and help each other out.
so how did that help you doing that?
I think visualizing thoughts helps quite a lot, because like particularly then I was not very I didn't really have much of a sense of self. So I think visualizing those thoughts and these inner conversations really helped to get a sense of actually how I was feeling about things. And because the reason why I made two characters was it often kind of felt like I was arguing with myself about like, should I do this thing? Did I say the right thing, kind of thing? And there was one, I don't think I have it here with me because I think I left it at home. But there was one where I drew like this massive 12-panel comic depicting their response to something that happened at college.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Mm.
Yeah, so then you use those characters to sort of reflect on what as something that's happened or a situation. It's like the angel and the devil.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
And I
isn't
did some little stickers of them as well.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think that externalizing those thoughts, so taking anything that's in your head and almost putting it on the table and looking at it, and in whatever way you do that, you start to realize that it's not just this, it's not like part of your DNA, it's not something that's just inside you, they're thoughts.
That's not how it has to be. Like you can think about it and
fiber of
contextualize it. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not, your thoughts are not you.
Yeah.
They're just your thoughts.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
Amazing Grace is what we always call you.
Yeah, there's a reason your name.
Yeah, and there's a reason. I'm going to wrap it up now, I think, just
alrighty
in terms of recording, because
I certainly said I'd ramble, and I did that.
No, you've been absolutely brilliant, actually. Really insightful, and more insightful than even we knew, and we've known you for so long. So actually it's been really, really nice to hear you talk about it, and I think like to see where you're at now, that you can talk in that way about it and be reflective.
As much as the last year has been horrific, it's definitely kind of helped me sort of be more introspective and then talk about it as well.
Yeah.
And you're in a good place now?
Pretty good, yeah, pretty good. I still get the occasional, I think the last thing that upset me was just being super hyper empathetic. Because when someone I care about tells me they're feeling bad, I then feel bad for them.
Yeah.
And that is actually an autism trait. Just like like a lot of people say autistic people aren't empathetic at all, but then you get the other end of the spectrum where they never stop feeling empathy, which is me.
And that's a very like girl autistic trait, whereas, and I think then, like you said, like autism is such a big spectrum, and people only know like specific traits of it, and so they apply it to everybody. When you shouldn't be doing that for any sort of person. Black people, you know, people with a disability, you know, anybody. Having those stereotypes doesn't work for everybody. And I think, like, the fact that you talk about it and you like can educate people on it, people just need to like learn about it more. And I think people would be more empathetic to things, because that's how everybody learns, isn't it? You know,
Mm.
you might think you don't know autistic people, but then when you start talking about it, you're like, oh, I did know, but I didn't recognize that. But then you can learn to educate yourself and, you know, help those people, because it's not always obvious, you know.
Mm.
So
And if we just all start from a place of kindness,
that's it.
you know, if you just try and treat people with kindness, regardless of what, you know, you think they might be suffering from or with, or you know,
or just going through in general.
Yeah, everybody's dealing with stuff, and I just think if we can start from a place of kindness, that's you know, 90% there. Thank you so much, Grace.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you for listening to me ramble.
I love a Grace ramble.
Really,
Excellent.
really powerful, actually, and really insightful, and really enjoyed it.
Because also, I was just going to say, I didn't know you at the beginning, so I've only ever seen sort of the Grace that you are now. So it's so interesting to know like what your journey is, because I'd never known that. So I've always seen the Grace in her socks at prom, you know? But so it's like amazing to like be able to hear like how far you have come, and like the way that you have had to sort of like adapt to be the Grace that you want to be, because like it's just amazing. I actually got a bit emotional when you were talking.
Me too.
I find it incredible,
because and what I love about that is you can choose. You can choose. You can choose what you want to be and who you want to present to the world.
And sometimes it does feel like that version of you is so far out of reach, and you've sort of buried it so deep inside. And then sometimes it just takes like one or two happy things to bring that version out. Like there was this is like one last anecdote, and it relates to Girls Where You At. So it was, I think, when we had the 1 year anniversary party in October 2017, I was wearing this jumper, actually, weirdly enough. And I'd had a terrible day at college. I'd had a terrible week at college, to be fair. And I just wanted to go to bed and sleep for a week. But I had this thing to go to, so I put a little bit of makeup on. I got dressed in a nice jumper, got the bus, went to South Street, and had a brilliant evening. And it was just good vibes all around, great music, good people. And that just put me in a really great mood.
I remember that night. It was so fun, and everyone was just really up for it. And like you say, it can just change your energy then, can't it? And then it changes how you feel about the next day. Or
there's a song that goes, where your focus goes, your energy flows. Absolutely. There we go.